And it's going to record with my Otter AI.
Good for note taking.
Yep. So you'll get a transcript as well as the recording.
Excellent.
Okay, so let's get into it. I will share my screen. And I will show you why I use the multidimensional perspective. Prior to your birth, so prenatally, the sun was in the second hexagram. By the time you were born, it had moved to the seventh hexagram in Leo. And then by the time you were 3 months old, it had moved to the 44. So I show you that because it's showing that there's basically half the wheel, the sun moved, and half the wheel, the earth moved. So by the time a baby, any baby, is 3 months old, every cosmic energy in the mandala has been imprinted into their energetic aura. And when I was given by Ra the designs, the human design chart, which you would be in human design a projector. So I was given the mental world by Ra and what he called the dream design, which was a lunar calculation. You'll see that I've put it, instead of putting it in the horizontal 15 gate, I put it, all of these calculations, into a 64 gate. And the reason for that is that when I did the science on 30,000 cases, I recognized that from a physiologic standpoint, there is carryover between REM dreaming and the cortex. And so I use the vertical to show where energies impacted early development. And when I ran the calculations, I knew that this lunar calculation was the spiritual a week before birth and also REM. But it didn't give me the sleep design of a mammal. And I happen to have twin kittens. So I used the lunar minute calculation to differentiate twins. And when I laid out, and I was given the 33 gate matrix while I was developing the system. And it turns out that the timing are critical developmental periods in early human development. So 3 months before birth, the cortex becomes impressionable. A week before the soul enters the fetus, 2 days before Braxton Hicks contractions, woman's hormones changing, baby's in the birth canal, an hour and a half is transition of labor, an hour and a half after birth, the baby's breathing on its own. 2 days after birth, colostrum turns to milk and the baby attaches, mother-child attachment. A week after birth, spiritual enters, Aborigine societies, Judaism, baptism. Many cultures say it takes a week for the soul to anchor. And then 3 months after birth, we know developmentally a baby reaches. At 3 months of age, as in your case, you become a rather strong, boom, 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 boom.
Split definition.
Split definition manifesting generator. And What's really important in your design, more than any other channel, is the 214, because that's direction of the self. And you get it in the emotional world. So for you, the key is going to be creative intelligence. How do you think outside the box? How do you think in a new way? How do you use the energy of what you know is right for you to manifest in the world? And your north and south node, so you have a lot from the self to the throat. You always keep the 4426. Have the 27. 27 is Venus. Cross of the Sphinx. Rulership. I don't use profile because it's an artifact of the math. Instead, I use the keywords. So in your case, it's Sphinx, rulership, refinement, Sphinx, dominion, and alertness. Seeing that oh, that's interesting. The one connection, 1762. Okay, so you go from having very open in all of your designs, except for the postnatal solar minute, which is the emotional world, through the 3828. So a lot of how you process is going to be instinctive, intuitive, and the question, well, you get the sacral pretty quickly. So the 2 is your sun, and the 14 is, oh, it's your moon. Okay, so the critical factor for you is to always ask, am I going in the right direction? Clean questions for self reflection, not questions that slant your thinking in kinesthetic, visual, or auditory direction. It needs to be an inner spiritual, inner alignment for you, that you know what you know when you know it. And when you allow, and it's tricky, it's really tricky for you because you're an empath, an emotional empath. And because you have the 59, which is Mercury in Virgo, across all, oh, then it moves to the 64. And the 59 moves from Mercury to Venus. So the 214 is a very, I take it when I see it in somebody's design as extremely important. Because what is it in human design? The 214 is keys of the kingdom. direction of the self. In your case, you have an open an open solar plexus, an open sacral, and an open root. But if we add the 214 in, this is your prenatal chart. This one, activated integrated vehicle response to life, is your postnatal one. So prenatally, you were a split definition manifesting generator at birth. You didn't have to wait the 3 months or a week or a day. You were self-directed from the time you were a kid. Now, that's not to say that people let you be self-directed. I don't know about your childhood, but what is most important to you is to be doing things that resonate with you in alignment. And where you have to be really careful is in picking up energy emotionally from people and taking too much responsibility for transforming that energy. Now, I don't know the timing of when your luck changed, so to speak, but I would not be surprised if some of it came with COVID, because so much emotional angst has been occurring over the last 5, 6, 8 years, that the responsibility you feel for making a difference, and your north and south node 4424, and it stays in 4424 until it goes to the 2827. You have that channel in the north and south node in the postnatal solar minute. You feel when energy shifts, and part of what you need to discern is whether or not it's right for you on your energetic level to transform the emotional energy you're sensing, because not everybody's going to be open to your input. Am I hitting it for you? Is what I'm saying resonating?
I think you were correct on all regards.
Okay.
So
So,
to a surprising level. So I mean, the things you said could be said about many people, right, in a general sense, but specifically with me, those are the um, the most important points or pain points or trigger points as well. So yes, in the past number of years, I have grown increasingly sensitive to the energy around me, and I had to remove myself from various groups of people. For example, family, it was too chaotic, or friend groups that were just no longer resonated with, etc. So, and then especially with COVID and the way the world has changed so much, um, I have distinctly felt that energy change, and it's a lot. It's the world, especially with the feeling of responsibility that I have for, I don't know, like you said, this feeling to make a difference or play a role in it as opposed to avoid it or just
well,
get mine type thing.
so look at the designs. Notice that in the spiritual level. Now, I feel pretty certain that the unifying integrated field of consciousness is the spiritual design. Why? Because if we look at the matrices here, let me make this bigger. You have them in your document, but look at the matrices. What's so interesting about them, and I'm integrating them with the tree of life. So in my classes, I'm walking through each path of intelligence in the tree of life. Ross said the body graph is a synthesis. I studied the tree of life for 20 years, and I'm an astrologer, and I'm a psychologist, and my PhD from University of Chicago was from the Committee on Human Development, which was the first integrative social science department, 4 worlds: sociology, anthropology, biology, and psychology. So when I um, got these 4 worlds, and I'm a Tai Chi Gong teacher, so I do figure eights. And the figure eights go from the mental to the physical biologic, then come to the emotional, and then go to the spiritual. So we're always moving around in a figure eight. And this mental waking and the physical biologic are the only 2 matrices that have the solar plexus. You are very much in the spiritual realm. And when people think in the mental dimension only, you don't get it. Because you have the crown to the Ajna in the spiritual world. So let's look at what that is for you. Now you get the 1762 in the mental waking world, but you get the information that you're processing from the spiritual world. And so it's tricky for you, to put it mildly.
Try living it, Eleanor.
Ah,
Yes.
not
Yes, it is.
easy. Not easy.
So
Um,
I'm good with systems and conceptual stuff, and sometimes I think about that like it's a good thing I am because just managing my own connections and world is indeed tricky, but it gives me experience and insights that I can help other people with
exactly.
easier.
And you have, so the 6447 is always pushing you to make sense out of what you're perceiving.
Yes.
Using that word specifically, you're not thinking, you're perceiving. Big difference.
Specifically, how is that the big difference? Just so I'm on the same wavelength as you.
Um,
It's more intuitive.
it's intuitive and it's wanting to make sense out of something
Exactly.
that you can make sense out of, but the way most people think about it is not going to lead them to the answer. Now,
Correct.
you ultimately, a week after you were born, you got the 63-4. So not only are you looking for an answer, but you want it to be solid.
Exactly.
And it irks you when you don't have the answer.
Wow, irk is a good word. I like that word. Yes,
Um,
and especially when I say why and they say because or that's just how it is or whatever, that's not an answer. That's not
no, it's
acceptable.
not an answer. Now you have the 24th hexagram, and it's your south node. So I don't know what you do, but my understanding of the 24 came from a clinical case I had. It was a famous actress who loved when she worked on Broadway. And one of the Roger Ebert gave her a bad review, and it ruined her career. So she went to movies. She became a movie star. She had TV shows, but it really irked her that she wasn't a stage actress anymore. That was her love. And it bothered her enough that she kept bringing it up in therapy. And I looked at her chart and she had the 6124. And the 24 is return. So I began thinking, what is this for her? And it was like she had to keep going back to figure out what it was that was standing in her way because she should have been able to transform it and she couldn't. So I came to understand that the 24th hexagram is return to issues that you can't quite put your thumb on, but you know you need to understand it to transform something. Now, the crown and the ajna, in your case, connects up in the solar world. So you're taking something that's sort of, there's more to it than meets the eye, but you need to look at it using higher intelligence, not mental world intelligence. And you are designed to think outside the box. And if the people you're around can't think that way, they look at you like you're crazy.
Eleanor, you nailed it. Especially if you say what box, as the old quip
Exactly.
goes.
Um,
And
Now,
just so you're aware, I have the 24 three different times on my
I
chart
know.
this year. So
And and it doesn't ever become defined.
uh, you're
You
saying in
never
any
get
of the
this,
worlds, it never
you
connects.
never get to the 61.
So
So
is that an itch that doesn't get scratched then? Is that what that means?
no, but it's not, it's not the mystery. It's for you, it's the nuts and bolts of a problem that you keep returning to that has to be solved outside the box, but not everybody wants to hear what the solution is.
Or the questions?
Right.
You nailed it absolutely. So there's many
Because,
times when somebody's teaching something, and then I will be asking these questions about the nuts and bolts aspects of it in order to get that conceptual clarity, and they they just don't get it. They think it's a trick. They I don't know, and I'm legitimately asking this to figure this animal out, this system out, and it's very hard to get that data or that input a lot of times to solve it, which leaves me irked, as you mentioned, frustrated.
um, you have to do it. Mars is in the 47. But the north and south node of 44 and 24, until they switch to the 28, 27 and 44, 20, well, 44, 24, 27, 28. Now the 27, 28,
Which one are you looking at now?
looking at all of them.
Okay.
I'm looking at I'm looking at Mars, Venus in the 27,
Yes.
and then 44, 24,
Mhm.
44, 24. 44.
So when you're doing a reading, you're looking at how the gates move or transition from one world to the next?
Yes. And where does the connection happen? So
Aha.
for you, the splenic center is the key.
I was hoping we would talk about splenic because might I just interject here that everything Ross said about projectors, I resonate with greatly. However, everything he says about the splenic center itself, I just don't get. And people say, "Oh, you're like this, you're like that, splenic's this," and it just doesn't with me.
Now,
So
the splenic center in the tree of life. So I teach from and have been using the tree of life and the Kabbalistic structure because if we look at, let me, do you know the tree of life at all?
though that system, very little, unfortunately.
Wait, hold on a second. Let me pull up something. See where I can find it. Um, where did I put it?
You had to ask me about something I don't know about.
Um, maybe I put it here. Um, Let me go into my PowerPoint and find it. Hold on. It might be this one. This is, no. Okay, I'm just going to pull up my 31st path of intelligence.
Are you looking for a diagram?
Yeah, but I was also looking for a PowerPoint I did to explain it, which I can't find. So I will just uh, stop that share, start this share. I'll just do my desktop. I'll hide my mail. Okay, and that's your chart, and that's my PowerPoint. Okay, so you can see my PowerPoint now, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the tree of life. The
Could you make it bigger though, however? Maybe full screen it? That's good.
I don't want to lose your chart
Got
uh,
it.
by making. So I just want to show you. This may not be the best. Yeah, here it is. Okay. So the 32nd path of intelligence. Oh, let me go back and show it to you. So the 32nd path of intelligence goes between the sacral center and the root. And it's called the administrative intelligence. It's the world card in Tarot. And if you can see that in the tree of life, there are 4 divisions in the root. Now, one of the interesting things I found, Freedom, is that the centers factor analyzed for these shapes. It was one of the things that let me know that the body graph was scientifically okay. It wasn't just type that held up statistically on 30,000 cases, but it was also that the centers, the triangle centers, had 3 factors. I assume you know some statistics?
The concept of statistics or your studies?
No. When I say factor analysis, you know what it is.
To an extent, yeah. I've done statistics.
Okay. So to me, knowing that the triangles were 3 factors and the squares were 4 factors said something.
Sure.
So when we go from the sacral center through the 32nd path of administrative intelligence, what we're being shown is that we are incarnating in physical form to bring spirit into the world. Then when we go up the 31st path of intelligence, it's a path called the perpetual intelligence, and the physical form is left out of it. So when we are in this 31st path, now when we go from the sacral to the root, and there are 3 channels in the body graph, what's left out? The physical form. So we have mental, spiritual, emotional, but the mental and the biologic have to come through a different route. And then if we look at the 31st path of intelligence, there are 3 channels. I like people, when they're looking at the channels, to look at the hexagrams. Because if you look at the hexagrams, you see that all the hexagram trigrams in the root center have the same lower trigram. Same thing in the splenic center. But it's Capricorn, Capricorn, Capricorn. It's very grounded in the root, and then it moves into the splenic center. We have wind on the bottom. 18 is work on judgment. It's energetic alignment. I had the 5818 completely wrong. The 5818, 4816 are the only definition in my mental world. I have the 5818, 4816 in every design. Never goes away. It's alignment. It's having the talent to hear whether the person you're with is spiritually aligned or not. The 3828 is the instinct for whether there's danger or not. It's in the spiritual realm, and it's in the 15-gate matrix, and it is there to protect us if there's danger. If we're in sleep and there is danger, we wake up. We're almost comatose, but there are alert systems in the sleeping design. And then the 5432 is rather interesting because the 54 is in 2 worlds, the emotional angelic world and the biologic world. The 32 is in the biologic world, no other world. So if we're setting goals, we must make certain that those goals are physically healthy goals for us. In this document that I did for my class, I pulled each thing out and further delineated. But in terms of your chart, what's really important in this for you to understand, let me hide this. It's a Noble Energy Map program. My son made me the program. So for you, what do you have in the Splenic Center? Well, you get the 28, but you get the 3828 2 days after you were born, which means instinctively you know if somebody is connecting with you or not. It's instinctive for you.
If they're connecting with me, just meaning a personal vibe, we'll say, if I'm just talking to somebody.
If you're talking to somebody, given your route to the Splenic Center, you know if they're aligned with you or not.
I would say the vast majority of the time, yes.
When you don't, they may have triggered you emotionally, and you don't want to transform it for them because their vibe is not healthy for you.
I think that's a fair statement. The other option is if they're a narcissistic type person, or I don't know, they're selling garbage products or something like that. If they're nefarious in some way,
Well,
and that
the issue for you has to do with integrity.
for me, yes, I've just found I've been able to be tricked a few times, and it took me a while to figure out that it was normally I can sense it very quickly, but there are some people who are very good at tricking other people. So
They would
usually
do
I
it,
catch it.
they would do it mentally, and they would say or do, they would hide the truth of who they were.
Yes, exactly.
But the 5848 for you,
Did did you want a full screen or something a little bigger there, maybe?
I can make it bigger. I am pretty full screen. Um, Although I have a 27-inch monitor, so full screen is pretty big. I can make it bigger. Is this okay for you?
Well, I also have the charts. I just meant for the Zoom here, but um,
Yeah. Okay. So the 5818 is a channel that tells if the person you're around or yourself is aligned with spirit. But it's not, it's a higher octave of being because it goes up through the channels to the crown and ajna with creative intelligence. I've been a TM meditator since 1974. And Maharishi, in the science of creative intelligence, often talked about creative intelligence. In the emotional angelic world, this design, it's a 33 gate matrix. So it's this matrix. I know it's small, but I don't want to change
no,
the rest.
I see it.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind I have that split definition though, so I think there's a gap, a single gate gap somewheres in mine.
Um, yes.
In fact, I had counted six different individual gates that would bridge my split. So I assume those are the people I'm looking for in the world, people that fulfill
Not
that.
necessarily.
Okay.
Um, I don't take a split as something missing. I also for projectors, I don't tell them they need to wait to be recognized. I think that's bullshit. I tell projectors, you need to recognize what's right for you. You don't have to look outside yourself. You know yourself. It's about honoring who you are and not compromising when you know what you know because you know it.
I
Um,
like that definition much more. Yes.
well, psychologically, it's more accurate. Remember, I'm a psychologist by training. I'm a licensed clinician. I've been in practice for 60 years. I mean, I'm much older than I look. So, um, you are a very strong single definition. You know your direction. You know what you need. You know how to lead. You know how to tune into people. Where you fall off is you're a bit of a caretaker and you don't always recognize when the other person is going to demand more of you than what you are willing to give because they're not taking responsibility for their role in their health, their well-being, their business, their relationships.
You nailed it exactly. As I've come to realize in life, I care about people more than they care about themselves or are willing to put the work in to improve their own situation.
Are you in a relationship
No.
by choice or because you haven't found the right person?
Um, well, I think factor of both because I've just been focusing on my own direction and issues and things like that at uh, for a few years now, more so than before, but just trying to figure things out more that um, I was raised in a very sheltered environment. You mentioned the childhood before, and which has made me fairly naive in life. And I tend to think people are better than they actually are, as far as what we're all going to work together and cooperate to solve the problem, et cetera, et cetera. And so, in recent years, I've come to realize that's often not the case with people, and have just worked on A, my own shadow, baggage, whatever you want to call all that, and B, just more reorient reorienting myself in the world so that um, I have a stronger direction in of myself, meaning not looking to outside people for completing me or that fulfillment or anything of those natures, but also being aware that it's my responsibility not to bring baggage or trauma or whatever into a relationship as well.
Well, everybody brings baggage into a relationship. That's what relationships are about.
So I hear. Yes, I
Well,
realize that.
but that said, if it's the right relationship, I was married, had two kids, decided to get a divorce because our values diverged. I recently wrote an article about divorce. Um, and I realized that my first husband, and I loved each other while we were in graduate school. And then when we graduated, I went spiritual and he went power and money. And it was not compatible. Um, I met my second husband on a trip to India because a voice told me to go. And we lived less than a mile from each other in California and had never met. We moved in all the same circles. I met him the day and time my mentor astrologer told me I'd meet somebody. And we've been together since the day we met. That's not to say we haven't had fights or arguments or triggered each other, but I mean, I can't imagine a better relationship. We've been together for 47 years. So,
Well, many congratulations on that. Uh, I
so
come from a not a good childhood, and my parents were not happy together, so that adds to my hesitation for commitments and such as well. However,
well,
you have a point there, I'm sure.
having in I'm a lot of my work was specializing in relationships. Uh, my first book was called Marriage in Trouble, A Time of Decision, because it took me 2.5 years to decide to divorce my first husband. It was not an easy decision. Um, and there was nothing that helped people make a decision. But subsequently, what I realized is that every world has its own communication patterns. And when I say to you for the 214, use clean questions, I'm using clean language. What are you going in the right direction? Are you in the right perspective? Are you aligned within yourself? Those are clean. There's no visual, auditory, or kinesthetic cues in those questions. And so if we're dealing with an inner state, to say to somebody, what do you feel? Is this empowering? Because if they don't know what they feel, maybe it's what they think, maybe it's what they know. Communication skills are world specific. If you're dealing with in life stuff, you want to use mental world communication. And now I did your astrology. The astrology chart shows two things, more than that, a lot. Your sun is in Leo in the 11th house, which means you're very good with people if you so choose to be in a group or in a community. However, North Node and Uranus in Scorpio, 3-degree Scorpio Uranus conjunct North Node. That's resources, inner resources, self-esteem, money, intensity. People are not going to get what you're talking about a lot of the time. You're too deep for them. You go deep, and not everybody can handle it. I have a 3-degree Scorpio moon. My mentor astrologer looked at me when she first did my chart and she said, well, dear, she looked like a witch. She had a red wig and glasses that pointed up. And she said to me, well, dear, people aren't going to understand your depth or your intensity. People are not going to understand your depth and intensity. You
I
also,
am well aware of that, Eleanor. Yes. That does factor into the relationship aspects as well.
right here. However, your depth and intensity make you psychic. And if you don't know that you're psychic and that you pick up on what people feel and know, then you may not be using those skills. I want to look before we run out of time. I want to look at this. This is telling me what's going on with you now. I did this obviously 2 days ago. Um,
Well, and there was one concept I was hoping we could cover is I believe my Chiron return is coming soon. That's something I have to learn more about because I sought you out because human design was very accurate for me with the projector thing initially, but then as I delved into it more for other people and investigated it as a system, right? I'm learning the complexity of it. It's been about 2 years. I start finding all sorts of things that don't quite jive, and then this stuff about this guy named Ra, et cetera, et cetera. So I've appreciated many of your banters with Sean and your forthrightness about how things were behind the scenes, right? As I was looking into the origins of the system. So that's why you and I are talking here because I appreciate your expanded version here, and also everything you've said today has been extremely accurate, which we haven't bantered before our meeting here today to any extent. So it's for you to
Your
be able to get that
Chiron,
is amazing.
your Chiron is in the third hexagram, and it stays in the third hexagram everywhere. So I use Chiron in all my charts. Um, I don't so much talk about the Chiron return because Chiron is active. When I studied Magi astrology, the Magi astrology people said some things that made me think they were right on. And what they said about Chiron is that number one, Chiron was first noticed in 1783. When a planet is acknowledged or a planetary body, it becomes active in a chart. It was reactivated cosmically in consciousness in 1977. So anyone born in the 20th century had Chiron active in their basic chart. So for you, breathing is key. The Chiron in the third hexagram in the root, which connects up through the 214. If you are in somebody's presence, you're nice and relaxed, you've meditated, you've had a good day, you meet somebody, and suddenly you notice your breathing is tight. It's not a good person for you.
So that's the breathing is more the indicator than say
You,
the
for you.
splenic, the quiet voice of the spleen as the normal human design ways go.
Well, the Splenic Center in the tree of life, the 32nd path, the 31st path, the 30th path. Then you go back down to the root and you go 29, 28, 27. So the 27th path of intelligence connects the solar plexus and the splenic center. Now you have an undefined solar plexus. So
In every chart, all the way through.
all the way through. And you have the 59th hexagram, but you do get the 4919 in composite. And it operates between the lunar and the solar minute. So you are constantly vigilant for the emotional state of the other. That would have come out of childhood.
Yes,
And do you have an animal?
I do not. I
Have
love
you?
animals though.
But you should have an animal.
I should have a farm with many animals, but yes,
How about one animal?
that's a good place to start.
Um, the reason I say that is because an animal would keep you tuned in to that channel, connecting the solar plexus, and also probably completing the split. That's probably why you love the animals. For me, this guy changed my life. Noble. all of my stuff is Noble. Noble, I got Noble when I was in my second year of graduate school. And he gave me the courage to do what I needed to do throughout my life. And when I was doing group therapy, I did group therapy for 10 years, every 6 weeks for a whole weekend. I would have 30 to 50 people in a group. And Noble would go to the next person who I needed to work with. He'd put his paw exactly on the spot I needed to pay attention to, and then he'd look at me. Everybody who met him got a cat. Everybody knew that wherever Noble went was where I was going to put my energy next. When he died, my vet friend said, if you've never had a cat, a litter, you need to do a litter. 13 cats later, I had twin kittens, one of whom died of cardiomyopathy at age 10, the other lived to 18. That's how I got my calculations. So I tell people when I see the kind of chart like yours, if you had an animal who could bridge the gap, and when I always say, when you meditate, keep your animals with you. Why? Because they're the spiritual matrix. So they activate spiritual energy and keep it active when we're in the mental world. For you, though, the 1949 comes in between the emotional world and the spiritual world, and it connects up in the integrated to your splenic center. So the 27th path of intelligence that is balancing splenic and solar plexus is part of your mission in life. Is when somebody's fucked and when somebody's not. Pardon my language. It's the only way to describe it.
It's an accurate description, yes.
And for you, if somebody questions your intuitive integrity, they don't belong in your life.
Agreed.
I mean, you have a split definition because you know what you know when you know it. And when people try to move you away from the direction that you know is right, they don't belong in your life because they don't know who the hell you are. I wanted to look more at this, and then I have to go, or I'm not going to get my swimming today. Oh,
When you make sounds like that, it's like, is that foreboding? Is that good?
no, it's very powerful that the Uranus, transiting Uranus, is right on your ninth house cusp, which means you're at a point where you're really looking at your values. Uh, the progressed Chirons in your ninth house, Jupiter right on your midheaven. I don't know anything about what you do or your profession, but it should be turning for you in the next.
It has been, yes.
So in 9 months, you should be free and clear.
It's a long time. How do you know 9 months? What is that?
I'm counting 6 months to 9 months is the trajectory of the timing in the chart.
Hmm.
Pluto is hitting your fifth. So use a lot of creative imagination and think outside the box for what you've been doing because the timing is exact now.
Well, it was forced upon me a while ago, and then I've investigated a number of directions, but none of them feel right, and the integrity concept comes into play. So, for example, online sales, affiliate marketing, and things like that. And it's great. You put the systems in place and set up your Shopify stores or whatever. But then I find out in the trainings that people don't care what they sell as long as they're making sales. Could be the worst garbage in the world. And then my integrity bothers me.
Right.
That's just one example of when trying to pick the direction. Unfortunately, in life, I actually care. And I actually care about doing the right thing, which makes it hard to to get ahead in arenas that don't
Um,
allow for that.
yes. Um,
So I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I have
no,
retooled
I
a number
think
of times and it's been a challenge. So if this is going to get aligned in this time frame you're saying, that sure would be a perfect timing. Yes.
the your progressed sun is right on your ascendant now. That means that whatever has been beneath the surface, but again, the progressed moon is telling me 7 months. What? 7 months. So I would say progressed ascendant. The timing is exactly right for you to be exploring new dimensions and new directions and think creatively.
Been doing it for a few years. I'm open
Um,
to input, but I feel I feel I have developed many, many, many skill sets in my past experience, training, schooling, etc. And it's just waiting for a very, well, like I'm the right guy for the job, like, you know.
yes, and I think you are, but I'd want to look at some other things. Um, we could certainly, I could certainly help you hone what you're doing. Um, we're not going to find it in the charts. I can see the timing, I can see the pattern, but it's a piece of paper. It's not real life. Um, so,
That's especially funny coming from you. You know what I mean? The one with all the research and all this, and the one that you would expect to say, "Oh no, we this is very important," and you say, "It's just a piece of paper. It's actually about you, the
right.
individual, and your
Well,
energy."
a chart is a chart. It's not the person, it's not life. And there when I teach and when I'm looking at the tree of life and how people integrate, and so few people have the strength to withstand and maintain their integrity in the face of truth. And I waited 20 years, 22 years, and I was invisible until the voice said, you know what you have, you know what it is, go public. I had to wait. I was public, but nobody could see it. So you have to wait until the planets align with your awakeness. And the last few years, people don't want to wake up.
I have noticed. However, I've had to prove my integrity and have not compromised it. So I got that part in spades.
You do. Where do you live in Chicago?
Uh, Suburbs, just outside.
Which
So
one?
Southwest suburbs, you know them? Well, I
I lived in
suppose you went to
Chicago for
school there.
12 years.
Yeah, okay. So out in the Bolingbrook area.
Ah, um, I lived there until I went to California and realized it was home.
Cali was home?
California was home, is home, but we live in Mount Pleasant now.
Yes. I don't feel Illinois is home, and that has been part of my
Struggle.
challenges as well as looking where else I would want to move before making as life has gotten more simplified for me, I don't need to make it more complicated until I figure out direction and settling in a new spot, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm taking advantage of this time to retool everything.
Excellent. Well, Perry, oh,
That's fine.
let me stop the recording. Let me just say thank you for letting me do a public reading for you. Um, I hope it was helpful and beneficial.
Well, it was certainly incredibly accurate on so many levels. I'm just wondering where to apply more of it. Do I just have to be more of myself and then it unfolds? Is that kind of what I gathered?
Yes, um, but doing that may require some guidance, some support, and I don't know what kind of support network you have or system you have, but using a complex, powerful chart as you have requires a lot of self-reflection and courage.
That's what I do for breakfast, Eleanor. What do I do after that? Yes.
You trust
In.
your higher self,
Okay.
and I'm going to shut the recording.